Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to talk to you guys about something that I do complain a lot about and that a lot of my videos are indirectly about. And so I've been doing these recently about character rebalancing, and it's often something that gets brought up because characters just don't feel like they're on the same power level. Of course, comparing people like Ultron to characters like Doctor Strange is worlds apart. But one of the big reasons why those characters actually compare to one another at all in the first place is because of things like PvP. Now, I know we don't have true PvP in this game, but we do have things like Timeline Battle, Alliance Tournaments, Alliance Conquest, Battle World, and those are the game modes that we're going to be referring to as PvP. PvP, if you don't know, is player versus player. It's not when you're interacting with a world boss, it's not when you're interacting with Villain Siege or the Frost Beast. It's when you're interacting with other characters and other players' accounts. So I'm attacking someone's account, their name is Big Whale 421, or someone else is finding me on timeline, finding Cynicalex, and trying to take down my timeline team. It's player versus player interactions. So I thought about this today, and it occurred to me that a lot of the gripes we have about character rebalancing are actually because characters don't feel strong enough against one another. Now, yes, there are still some characters who struggle in areas like World Boss or Shadowlands where they can't even beat Infinity Thanos, and that is disappointing, but I think the bigger issue is that the character just pales in comparison to other characters. So even though you really love a character like Falcon from the comics or from the movies, you can't build that character because there's really nowhere to show him off. There is the world boss stuff, and you could make a highlight about that, but really, you want to see your Falcon take down a Doctor Strange. You want to see your Falcon take down, other people's Falcons or Captain America, right? You want to see those kinds of interactions. So I thought about the PvP issues in the game, and there are a lot of big ones, and I decided that I wanted to start something new, and I wanted to start a refocusing of the perspective that character rebalancing matters, but only if we also get a PvP rebalancing as well. There's no point in making Captain America stronger or Black Widow if we can't use them in lots of different game modes. Now, it just so happens that they made both of those characters strong enough to hold up in Timeline Battle and other PvP game modes like Alliance Conquest, but that was probably more by accident than by design. I think primarily when they balanced those characters in particular, they weren't thinking about PvP, and I think that should be something that gets focused on. We're getting the X-Men, we've already got some of them, and we're going to be getting more, but I think now the final step to making this game, thank you for the Dimension Rift, truly a success and truly a game that every gamer can enjoy from top to bottom is to have a serious conversation and a serious rebalancing and restructuring of the PvP scene in the game. And I think it starts and pretty much ends with Timeline Battle. There's a lot of problems here, and I'll be the first one to admit that I was really happy to hear when we got the League announcement, and I thought this was going to be great and it was going to change the game, and it didn't. And then when they introduced the friends list, I thought it was going to change the game, and it didn't. And when they introduced recommended and restricted characters, I thought it was going to change things and it was going to be fun and fresh and exciting. And it's not. It's really boring, it's not good, and it's predictable. And that's what kills me the most, that they didn't even have the effort or the wherewithal, thank you for the Dimension Rift, to make this non-predictable. People have already figured out the rotations for the restricted list. The recommended list is still a mystery, but the restricted list maintains a strict pattern week after week. But that's for another video, for another topic. We need to give Timeline a major facelift because all these character rebalancings only go so far. We need to change the PvP, and I have some issues and I have some ideas. So I think that the biggest problem that Netmarble needs to address as far as Timeline and PvP goes is unfair matchups. With the introduction of the X-Men, we've seen a lot of people complain, as they do, when these things happen, that Jean Grey is far too strong in PvP and there's no way, and there's no feasible way for most people to beat her, and it's just frustrating to play against her. And I agree. Despite the fact that I have her, I agree it is frustrating to play against her. When Wolverine came out, it was the same thing. When Dormammu and Odin and Doctor Strange, when all these huge new whale characters come out, it's a huge burden on the PvP scene. The only difference that we have now between characters or players in different leagues is basically the people in Vibranium and Platinum probably play the game on manual. The people in Platinum and Gold and Silver probably play the game on auto, and they just auto run with clear tickets to run through all of their daily fights. And the people in Bronze probably don't even play timeline at all, or they do it as a joke, or they just started the game. So all of this league business is really not structured properly. Having the top and bottom 20% is really not an incentive. Thank you for the Dimension Rift. Because really, if you look at the rewards in and of themselves give you the top 20 and the bottom 20 already. You're not going to try and play for Vibranium if you're not going to get into the top 20 anyways. Nobody wants to be in Vibranium and get 120 crystals. There's really no difference to it. So I think that the first problem is with the league system. It needs to be trashed, and I have a suggestion for how they can change it. They can change this league system into kind of like a tier system. So they would get rid of the recommended and restricted characters. You could keep the recommended characters, but I would do away with the restricted characters. And instead, what I would do is I would change these leagues into 5 categories. Bronze becomes less than 6-star league, or we'll call that League 5. Silver becomes the Tier 1 league, or League 4. Gold becomes the normal Tier 2 league, that's League 3. Platinum becomes the native Tier 2 league, League 2. And Vibranium becomes the live PvP league. Now, there's a lot of things that I need to discuss about those ideas, so let's start from the bottom. The first league, Bronze, would become the less than 6-star league. That means any characters from 1 star to 5 stars could compete. That is for players who just started the game and they have some 3 or 4 or 5-star characters, but they're not geared up, they don't have uniforms, they don't have mastery. It's just to mess around in, and that's AI versus player, okay? But there's a little bit more to that, so don't worry. Silver is Tier 1 characters, so that's any character that's 6 stars but not Tier 2. Gold is normal Tier 2 characters. That means no native Tier 2s and no Black Order and no X-Men. That would be just normal Tier 2 characters like Captain America, like Falcon, like Malekith. Then the Platinum League would be native Tier 2 characters, so that would be all of the characters that start the game as native Tier 2. So that's the Black Order, Thanos, Dormammu, Doctor Strange, Odin, those characters, and Jean Grey. And then the Vibranium League would be live PvP. Now what that would mean is what we had before in the past, because there was a time when live PvP in Timeline was a thing. It wasn't very well received, but I think that was because it was implemented on a global scale and you didn't have a choice. My suggestion implies that, or makes it structured so that you don't actually have to compete in live PvP if you don't want to. And I would not structure the rewards for these different leagues based solely upon whether it's in Vibranium or not. So I think the rewards from Platinum and Vibranium would be exactly the same, and then you could downplay the rewards or have fewer rewards for Gold, Silver, and Bronze accordingly. But I think that the advantage to playing live PvP would just be if you want. And the disadvantage, or the other option, would just be to go to the native Tier 2 league or one of the other leagues. So you can choose which leagues you want to go into to spend your 10 daily or 20 or 30 daily runs. You don't have to do them all in the same league. You can hop around from different league to different league because you're still only accruing one type of currency, so it really doesn't matter. And they can just aggregate your total score and then put that on a global leaderboard, or they can do some other structure for it. They can make it by region. Okay, and maybe I would like to know where I place in all of Asia versus all of the world versus just Korea. I think that would be an interesting change, but that doesn't really matter. It's not the focus. The focus is changing it from you get fewer crystals at Bronze and more at Vibranium, and you still have these silly restricted lists, to you're going to choose the league you want depending on which characters you want to fight with. Do you want to fight with your Tier 1 Electra? Go into the Tier 1 league. You want to fight with Corvus? Go into the native Tier 2 league. You want to fight with the 3-star Whiplash? You go into the less than 6-star league. And I think this would alleviate a lot of the issues that the player base has with unfair matchups, because then if you want to fight Jean Grey, you're going to have to go into the native Tier 2 league or the PvP league to do so. In addition, if you wanted to take on those native Tier 2 characters with your Tier 1 characters or your normal Tier 2 characters, if you wanted to try out all kinds of wacky situations, you would have to do so in the Vibranium League, which we would rename the Live PvP League. and so that would kind of incentivize people in multiple ways. Now, the issue with having AI versus player is the other big issue that people have with Timeline, that it's not fun to play against the computer. It's not fun to play against basically no one, and I agree. However, I do have a solution. The solution would be that Leagues 5 to League 2, so everything except live PvP, would still be player versus AI. However, they would change this screen here, and they would just make one small addition. On the left side, under the 4th button, or under the 5th button, which is a plus sign for me because I have the team slot, they would add another button, and this other button would be the pre-chose skill rotations, or the PvP team button. And when you pressed that button, it would take you into a screen where you would select your PvP team. You would set up for that day your PvP team, or for the week, whatever. And then you would, once you chose those characters, you would choose what their skill rotation is. So do they start with the 5th skill? Do they start with the 2nd skill? And you lock that in, and then you can't change it. Let's say you want to change it, it costs 30 crystals or 50 crystals. It doesn't matter. It can be like Alliance Conquest. You can't change it until the day has reset, until the daily reset. I know it would take some coding, but it really wouldn't be that big of a deal, and they've already shown, thank you for the Dimension Rift, that they can code these kinds of effects into things like Conquest, where you can set up defense characters, you can change them for crystals, and you can do these kinds of things. If they can house all of that information for all people that compete in these Conquest events, then they can do the same thing for people's individual accounts who want to set their own AI skill rotations for Timeline, for PvP. And I think that any change to PvP, any change to Timeline has to include this as a top priority. Even if you ignore my first point about leagues and you keep the Vibranium to Bronze garbage and the recommended and restricted list, fine. But I think it's time we need preset rotations for AI versus player interactions. I want to know if you can beat my Thanos if I set up a specific rotation for him. I want to know if my Wolverine is better on defense with this rotation or with that rotation. I don't want to just roll the dice and gamble it. So I think this is something that Netmarble seriously needs to take into consideration and should put some effort towards producing for us. They can even make it so that if you don't participate in that and you don't go into that tab and you don't set it up, it just defaults to whatever random mechanic that Netmarble has there now, because they obviously have one, and it actually changes its mind sometimes, because I've fought certain characters, the same character against different accounts, and they do different things. So there is some AI working in the background. They can just scrap that or keep it as an aside, but put in something that we can customize for our characters. Aside from those two huge changes, I do have some minor issues that I have with the PvP system with Timeline that I think Netmarble could very easily address to make it a cleaner and fair and more balanced system for everyone. The first one is one that I've said before, but I need to state it again. Get rid of these bonuses, okay? These roster bonuses are silly. Okay, they skew numbers and they confuse people, and they make it unfair for newer players coming into the game to even compete. If you have a roster of 5 characters and I have the full roster, my advantage over you based solely on this character bonus is insane. I can probably beat your tier 2 character with my 5-star character just because I have an additional 30% HP, 30% all attack, all defense. I basically have the equivalent of 3 or 4 different leaderships stacked on top of each other, and that's insane. These bonuses are silly, they're confusing, and they punish new players in PvP, where PvP is supposed to be a fair playing field for everyone. You want us to wail out and spend money collecting new characters? Fine. You have the bonuses in co-op and Shadowlands already. I already get more bonuses from having more characters in co-op. There's already a bonus for having more characters in Shadowland because I can clear up to stage 25 faster. There's already a bonus for having more characters in something like Conquest. Okay, we don't need this in Timeline. Timeline should be about fair parity. You versus me, mano a mano. The next thing I think that Netmarble should look at changing, and this is probably going to rustle some feathers, is the obelisks. I think that the invincibility proc on obelisks, specifically in Timeline, should be increased. I think that the cooldown is too low. Okay, you can have an obelisk that has 5 seconds of invincibility. For example, the one that I have on Thanos has 5 seconds of invincibility on a 10-second cooldown. That means that 50% of the time after his HP is below 40%, he's invincible all the time. There is no fun factor in playing against a character where if you don't one-shot them, they suddenly become invincible and immune half of the time. It makes it so that characters like Jean Grey who can pierce are disproportionately powerful because they can avoid this mechanic, and everyone else gets punished really hard, and it's silly, and I think it needs to change. Okay, having this in PvE modes, in story mode and world boss, whatever, but in PvP 10 seconds is far too short. Compare the 10 seconds on an obelisk proc for invincibility to an ISO 8 set. Those are on a 60-second cooldown, guys. What would you rather? Be invincible half the time, or every 6 seconds you heal for 22% of your max HP? There's no question. Do you want 20 seconds out of 60 with an attack buff, or do you want to be totally immune to damage for half the time? There's just no comparison at all. And in the meantime, the cost of actually equipping awakened ISOs is arguably as much as it is to roll a good obelisk. Maybe it's a little bit less, but still, 10 seconds is insane. All they have to do is change it and put a notice in when you go into PvP. Please know, obelisk procs are, multiplied by 200%, so that 10 seconds turns into 30 seconds. I'm not good at math. Maybe it's not 30 seconds, but they should change it to being 20 seconds or 30 seconds because it's far too short right now, and it makes it a very abusable part of the game, which just makes PvP really boring and non-interactive because you're basically fighting a wall half of the time, and it's something that honestly should be changed. Another thing that I think should be changed, and this kind of might not make sense to you because I'm saying they need to reduce the duration of the obelisk procs, but I think they should increase character HP. And I know that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but the reason why they should increase player HP or character HP in Timeline is the same reason why I think they should reduce the damage you take in PvP. And the reason for that is one-shotting. Getting killed in one shot, getting killed in one skill by an opponent. Sharon Rogers does it a lot, Doctor Strange, Dormammu, Odin, Thanos, now Jean Grey, Wolverine. There's a lot of characters who can kill you in one shot. Proxima, Supergiant. It's non-interactive and it feels really unfair. It feels like you got unlucky and you got clipped by one hit, stray bullet, bounced off the wall, ricocheted off the ceiling, and caught you under the chin. KO. Fatality. Not fun. Think of all other good PvP games. They take skill, and it requires patience, and it requires complex combinations of moves. It doesn't require pressing one button once and watching the whole screen get obliterated. If I wanted to play that game, I would play Duke Nukem. If I wanted to just blow up the screen in one shot, I would play a different game. So they need to change that, and they've already shown that they do want to change that because they radically buff HP in Conquest, Battle World, and Alliance tournaments. Why is it that all other PvP-esque game modes have like 300, 400, 1000% increased HP, but then Timeline doesn't? It really boggles my mind, and I know I've said it before, so I'm repeating myself, but it begs repeating. It does not fit, and it doesn't work for a PvP system that thrives. And right now, the PvP system in this game doesn't thrive, and this is part of the problem. The last thing I want to talk about as far as Timeline goes and how they should fix it if all of these other things get done, because I'm trying to do it in order of descending priority, so this is the least priority, but it's still worth mentioning, is the rewards. Now, I did a little bit of math, and it took me a long time, and you get 75 honor tokens per day, or per fight, sorry, which is 750 tokens per day. That equates to 5,250 tokens per week. What that means is you can get 30 bios per week of one of these three characters. That is a joke. 30 bios a week. You can get more bios for some story mode characters in one day. Okay, I know it doesn't cost energy, but still, 30 bios a week at this rate that exists in the game with story mode missions and Shadowland selectors is an absolute travesty. Okay, additionally, you can get 31 Nordstones a week. Not a day, a week. You can get more in one box of World Boss Invasion. That doesn't make sense. All the gold you spend on refreshing for Timeline versus spending 10 energy once and spending 2 minutes of your time in World Boss Invasion, no wonder nobody plays Timeline. The rewards are terrible. You want to buy some cards? Sure, you can get 26 cards, guys, a week. I can get 26 cards doing you know, 50 energies worth of runs in Dimension Rifts. I can help out my friends in my alliance. We can get a Dimension Rift bonus. Why is it that every other game mode has better rewards than the timeline rewards? Timeline is supposed to be PvP. It's supposed to be fun. You want to go with the random grab box of honor token chest bios? You can get anywhere from 31 to 93 bios because you can buy it 31 times, and you can get one bio, which would be 31, or you can get a maximum of 3 random bios, which would be 93. If you got 3 every time, give me a call. Jonathan obviously works for you. I want some of that RNG luck. Thank you for the Dimension Rift. They could double or even triple the rewards, and it still would not be, you know, superlative. It would be good if they tripled it. It would be okay if they doubled it. But they seriously need to look at boosting the amount of honor tokens you get, or lowering the cost of these so that your honor tokens go further, because 30 bios a week is an absolute joke at this rate. This hasn't changed for years, but we've gotten things like Shadowland that have totally eclipsed this and, you know, driven by it on a fast motorcycle at light speed. Finally, another thing that they could do, which I also beg them to do from time to time, is rotate the characters. Why don't they have an event where it's just one character, but it's every month? So instead of having the same 3 faces staring back at me, begging for me to waste my my honor tokens on them, they can have one character. Guys, it's July, Spider-Man. Spider-Man's in the honor token chest. You want to play PvP? Go get yourself some Spider-Man bios. That would actually make people excited. That might even draw people into the game. Guess what? August is going to be Venom. Now you can only get Venom bios and Agent Venom. Well, no, it's not going to be Agent Venom bios, but you get what I'm saying. They can make more fanfare out of it. They can create artificially, but also organically, if that makes sense, advertising for themselves in the game with existing game modes. It's a win-win, and I don't understand why they don't do it. There's literally no coding involved in this. All they have to do is disable 2 of them and change 1 of them every month. Hire me, Netmarble. I'll do it. I'll do it for free. We'll do it live. Okay, guys? So I got a little bit hairy at the end here, but these are my passionate feelings and my, you know, concerted effort to try and change PvP, okay? Fix PvP, please. We're starting it, boys. Fix PvP, please. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know if there's any other ideas that you guys have for this, but we're starting this now, and I'm serious about it this time. Fix PvP, please, is gonna happen, boys. Hit me up on Twitch, guys. We're tier 2ing new characters like it's going out of style. And of course, guys, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.